Welcome back to my Edmond State Team Builder Dynasty, and in today's episode we'll be handling the entire offseason because in the last episode we wrapped up the regular season with a 3-game win streak to finish the regular season 7-5, but unfortunately our win streak was snapped in the Gasparilla Bowl when we ran into number 21 ranked Florida State and lost 35-30. Before we jump into all of these season stats, I want to take a look at all of the awards, starting with the Heisman Trophy, which ends up going to Avery Johnson, the quarterback at Kansas State. He is also going to end up taking home the Player of the Year award. The Head Coach of the Year goes to the Kansas State coach, Tom Downing. Best Quarterback goes to Avery Johnson, not much of a shock there. Best Defensive Player, an outside linebacker from Mid-Tennessee State, and Parker Hughes. Best Defensive Back is a corner at Clemson. Best Running Back goes to Michigan and Jalen Buckley. Best Receiver is a receiver at Clemson and Antonio Williams. The Lombardi Award goes to Miami. The Unitas Golden Arm Award goes to Cade Klubnik at Clemson. The Best Defensive End, once again, Ruben Bain Jr., that's his second award. Best Interior Lineman goes to a guard at Clemson. Best Tight End goes to Georgia. The Broyles Award goes to the Defensive Coordinator at Utah. The Best Linebacker, Parker Hughes, gets his second award. The Best Center goes to Oklahoma. The Lou Groza Award goes to the Kicker at Georgia. And the Best Punter goes to Utah. The Best Returner also goes to Utah. One more thing before we jump into stats is the National Championship game, and that is going to go to Texas A&M, who just defeated Oregon 38-27. We are going to be starting with true freshman quarterback Morgan Eberle, who finished the year with 30 touchdowns and 9 interceptions for 3,200 yards, but he really came alive late in the season. You can see down here, to start the year, it was not a terrific start. Against Oklahoma, he had 3 interceptions and no touchdowns, a nice rebound game against Tulsa, and then just kind of like some average games. He was actually injured in this one against Florida International really early on, but then against Western Kentucky, something just flipped in his head. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Jacksonville State, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. We did lose to Louisiana Tech. He had no touchdowns and 1 pick, but then came back to beat Mid-Tennessee with 2 touchdowns, Liberty with 4 touchdowns, New Mexico State with 5 touchdowns, and then threw another 4 scores against Florida State in the bowl game. So ultimately, I am really happy with how he performed. I believe at the start of this year, he was a 68 overall. I could be wrong on that, but he is now up to a 74 overall. I'm excited to see if he can develop at all in the offseason. Moving on to rushing stats, unfortunately Dylan Turner got injured in our last few games of the season, so his career here at Edmond State was cut short. He finishes with 500 yards this year and 3 touchdowns. Gavin Garcia came in and was actually a really nice replacement, getting 4 touchdowns. Eberle ran in for 4, Dominique Speed had 1, and Marvin Sanders had 1. Another true freshman that really played well for us was Lyle Shermer. He ends up leading the team in receptions with 68 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 9 touchdowns. So he leads us in all 3 categories. But John Hart had a pretty solid season, 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. Dominique Speed also 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. Tony Livingston caught 6, and I feel like half of those, actually I believe half of those were in the bowl game. He caught 3 against Florida State. Bo McKnight got 2, Dylan Turner got 1, and Taven Smalls got 1. Middle linebacker Dell Slade ended up leading our team in tackles with a total of 89. Tackles for loss goes to Marlon Worthy and Stephylan Green, who both came away with 12. But Worthy came away with 10 sacks this year. Isaiah Hastings got 9.5, Nick Ortiz 4.5, and Green got 3.5. How many picks did we get this year? A total of 3 on the entire season. Antoine Copper got 2, and Hall got 1. That is obviously not what we want to see. There were several deflections though by Antoine Copper. We just really could not force a turnover to save our lives this year. Our freshman kicker, Sean Augustine, went 14 of 18 for a 77%, and I believe I was the one to miss all 4 of those. I don't think it really simulates that many field goals. If it did, I apologize and I don't remember, but I believe I was the one that missed all 4 of these. Whenever I do a dynasty or a franchise like this, I always like to see how many times we punted the ball in a season and compare that to the rest of the teams just to see exactly how bad our offense was. But I believe this is less punts than we had last year. Yeah, this year we are nowhere near the top. James Madison ended up punting the ball the most this year with a total of 76 times. And then here are the most accurate kickers on the season, and yeah, Woodring down here, 19 for 19. He was the one that won the kicker award. Yeah, I would say he probably deserved that. The most attempted goes to Michigan with 27, and the most made also goes to Michigan, but he ties with the kicker at Kansas State and the one at UCF. Now we can move on to the stats that people are actually going to care about. The most passing yards this year is actually a tie between Cade Klubnik at Clemson and Brock Vandagriff at Kentucky. They both threw for exactly 4,451 yards. The most touchdowns, though, goes to Brock Vandagriff with 50, and the most interceptions is Dante Reno at South Carolina, who threw 21 of them. And then who was the most accurate quarterback this season? It looks like it is going to be Taylon Green at Arkansas, who completed 78% of his passes. That is absolutely insane. The running back for Oregon, Jaden Ott, ended up carrying the ball the most this year, but he also played probably the most amount of games. He only beat Buckley by 1 carry, but the most yards is going to go to Buckley with 1,594, and touchdowns goes to Gavin Sawchuk at Oklahoma, who ran for 17 of them. And then most yards per game, there was only one that was over 100 yards per game, and that was Jalen Buckley. Antonio Williams at Clemson led the nation in receptions with a total of 99, only one off from 100. Obviously, I can do math. But then Jamori Macklin over at Kentucky had the most yards with 1,500. He also had 20 touchdowns, which is going to lead the country. Now, I will say sometimes the defensive stats are a little bit glitched out, and it's really kind of annoying, but you'll see what I mean here in just a second. Leading the nation in tackles is a tie between Kyle Efford and Winston Berglund, a guy at Georgia Tech and a guy at Purdue. Both came away with 116 tackles. In sacks, alright, maybe it's not completely broken. Devon Jackson at Oregon had 23 sacks this year, but you will notice here that Marlon Worthy is not up here despite the fact he came away with 10 sacks. That's what I mean, it's broken. But oh my god, 23 sacks. That's the most I've ever seen in simulation in this game. And interceptions goes to Ricardo Holman at Clemson, who came away with 8 this year. However, all of that is now officially out of the way, and we can move on to the offseason and try to get this team just a little bit better. As we prepare to go into the offseason, right now we are a 79 overall team across the board, and I do notice there that Antoine Copper is probably going to try to transfer away, which would not be good for us. If I'm remembering correctly, he also tried to transfer away last season. I was not a big fan of it then. I'm not a real big fan of it now. A pleasant surprise to not see Copper on the screen, despite the fact that he was in the red for a risk to transfer. But unfortunately, James Merling is here with a low chance to persuade him to come back. We're going to try it, and he has not been persuaded, so he will be entering the transfer portal. Now, seeing all the talent we're about to lose on this team does kind of scare me. Dylan Turner, our #1 player, easily our best player on the team, he is gone at an 86 overall. JJ Marler, our starting punter, is gone. Gavin Garcia, our backup running back, is now gone. Our starting left tackle, our starting outside linebacker, our starting middle linebacker for the second season in a row. We lost Warren Middlebrooks after last season. Then we have Jermichael Lane, our starting guard. Tyree Casper, one of our starting corners. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of people to replace on this team. Dominique Speed is also gone. Rylan Tobin, Marco DeMarco. Yeah, like I just said, we're going to have a ton of talent to try to replace. But before we even get into offseason recruiting, I was just trying to simulate from players leaving to the next stage. I didn't even know they could commit in this stage, but Devontae Mappa has decided to commit. Before jumping into offseason recruiting, can we please see if anyone got drafted? Dylan Turner was a decent rating, and we have our first ever drafted player. Dylan Turner goes in round number 7. Honestly, one of my biggest problems in this game comes in the offseason recruiting and the transfer portal area, and it's the fact that the seniors don't leave your team, and your guys don't get updated. So like Morgan Eberle is still listed as a true freshman, even though he will be a sophomore, and guys like Jason Queen are still on the roster despite the fact he graduated. So I really wish they would update stuff like that. But that complaint aside, I'm obviously still having a ton of fun on this game. Moving on to offseason recruiting, we are the #1 team in the CUSA right now with 15 total 3-star commits, and I've added a couple more to the board. Warren Stephen is a guy we're actually competing against Oklahoma State for right now, and it's a couple middle linebackers here, but I want to bring in both of them just to see if either one could develop for the future, because neither one is a gem prospect, but I really like some of each of their starting attributes. But moving on to the transfer portal, the first guy is Jaden Bethea, who we are trying to take from Appalachian State. You can see his ratings. He would come in and probably immediately be our replacement for Del Slade. We are also going to need a replacement for Dylan Turner, and I'm hoping to get that in Javius Bond, a guy out of Arizona State that we are trying to take. 92 speed, 96 acceleration, 92 change of direction. He should be pretty nice, but I honestly don't know if we'll be able to get him, as we are pretty far behind some of the other schools. The next one up is Emone Smalls, and I have no idea if I'm saying that name right, but he is at a UAV and would come in with some really nice attributes for us. 85 power move, 91 strength, 92 tackle. I think he'd fill in nicely at defensive tackle. The next couple guys are both defensive ends that I'm trying to bring in. One of them is Ty Thompson. He is out of Georgia Tech. And then Samuel Riddy Jr. is out of Eastern Carolina. Both of these guys, obviously, I think Thompson would start immediately. Riddy would be able to sit on the bench and hopefully develop. And the final guy I want to bring in is safety Carl Valentine out of Missouri. Just because we really don't have a great free safety on the roster. He was one of the better ones available in the portal, so I'm hoping we can actually land him. But now that all of that is out of the way, let's jump to the next week and see if anyone is actually going to commit just yet. I highly doubt they're going to commit after the first week. No one commits, but we also don't lose anybody. Well, not too much has changed this week. We are leading everybody right now, which is obviously great to see. I did add one new player to the board though, and that is true freshman receiver Dexter Costanzo out of Lafayette, Indiana, I believe. And no one's really going after him just yet, and he seems to be a pretty solid player and a gem prospect, so I figured why not. Now let's jump to week 3 and see if we lose anybody or if we gain anybody. Obviously, I would love to gain some players here. Do we get anybody? Yes, we get Jaden Bethea, one of the transfer guys, so I'm glad to see that. We get Emone Smalls as well. And do we lose anybody? No, we don't. So as of right now, we've just landed 2 transfer players. Just to give a quick update of these linebackers here at the top, Warren Steven is about a pixel and a half away from committing. And then Owen Hollins we'll probably get because we're still the only one going after him right now. And then on several of these transfer portal guys, we seemingly should have them after this week. Javius Bond, we're the only one even close. Ty Thompson, I'll probably schedule a visit for Bond anyway. Why not just do that right now, just to guarantee that we get him? And sure, proximity to home, we'll go ahead and just do that. Along with Ty Thompson, I cannot do it there, so we'll schedule one for week 4 just in case he has not committed yet. Once again, a proximity to home one. And then we have Riddy down here, who we've already scheduled a visit. And the only thing I'm kind of sad about is Dexter Costanzo. Now Iowa's going after him, so we may not land him, but we should land, I think, everybody else. Samuel Riddy is actually going to be really close, but he will be visiting this week, so hopefully we were able to grab him. And this will be the moment of truth. Do we lose out on any of these recruits right here and now? Going to this one, we get Warren Steven, we get Javius Bond, and we get Ty Thompson. Anyone else want to commit to us? We get Samuel Riddy as well, and we get Carl Valentine. So I think we've gotten everyone in the transfer portal that I wanted to get. Before I simulate the last week of offseason recruiting, I do want to show you guys I added a few more players to the board. Obviously, we're still going after Dexter Costanzo here, and now we are ahead of Iowa, and we scheduled him for a visit this week, so I'm really hoping we can pull him out. Owen Hollins, we're just waiting on him to commit to us, and I've added Stephen Kuma, just a quarterback down here that I think could sit on the bench and possibly develop for a couple years and maybe eventually become a starter, but other than that, it's just, kind of depth for our quarterback position. But he is not the only guy I added to the board. I added 4 more transfer players, none of which had any scholarship offers. I had already scouted Cam Crowell at one point and decided to go with the other 2 defensive ends and landed them, obviously. So now we're going to go after him just because apparently no one else wanted him. He is going to be coming out of Northern Illinois. The next player up is a wide receiver who is coming out of Oklahoma, Chadrick Queen. Does come in with 92 speed, 94 acceleration, 79 catching, which isn't great, but honestly, we don't have a lot of great catchers on our team anyway. Then we have right guard John Ward, who is transferring out of South Alabama. I honestly don't know if he'd be a starter on our team immediately, but I figured it couldn't hurt to bring him in. And then last but not least is safety CJ Turner, who is transferring out of Army, and I honestly don't even know if the guys from Army can enter the transfer portal in real life, but they can here, and we're going to try to get him. Now, obviously, this means we may miss out on a couple of the guys just because I went after them so late, but let's go to the final week of recruiting and see if we actually land anybody. We do get Owen Hollins, we also get Dexter Costanzo, and we get Cam Crowell. So we'll see if we get that quarterback later, but we do get Chadrick Queen, we get John Ward, and we get CJ Turner. Anyone else here? Yes, there he is, quarterback Stephen Kuma. So we get everyone on our board. We don't lose a single battle this offseason. Following that stage, we did level up a few times. I don't know why it did not show it, but we had 30 coach points to use. I went ahead and burned them all in the tactician tab. We have now upgraded fully the offensive line and the defensive line tabs. The number 1 recruiting class ends up going to Oregon, but I don't see how at all. They say they ended up with more points than them, but Ohio State and Oregon both ended up with 4 5-stars. Then Ohio State got 1 4-star more than Oregon, and Oregon beat them by 1 3-star. So somehow that equals Oregon had a better class. I don't really agree with that, but let's go see where we finished at. We finished as the number 42 class in the country, but the number 1 in the CUSA. The only one to pull in a 4-star in our entire conference was Western Kentucky. For all of the position changes, we only have one athlete that we actually managed to bring in, and we're going to go ahead and put him at, I believe, right end. The reason I threw him over at right end is because we currently have 7 left ends on the roster, and we only had 4 right ends on the roster, so that is why he is over here now. One other random position change I'm going to make is middle linebacker Wes Spears. We're actually going to move him to outside linebacker, because at middle linebacker, he was just going to be backing up Jaden Bethea. Now at left outside linebacker, he may actually see the field a bit more. Those were the only position changes made this season, and now we get the training results to figure out how much better everybody got. Now, I do wish it was more like NCAA 14, where it told you how much they got better, like where it told you by the overalls and then each individual attribute. That was a really cool feature. That is now gone. Now you just get to kind of guess and see how good everybody is. The very first thing that I noticed, though, is we have gone from a 79 overall team across the board up to an 82 overall team. Unfortunately, it does not look like any of our quarterbacks took a massive step forward. I did notice Teray's up to a 72 right now. It says he's a 73, but if you look in the top right of his player card, it says 72. And then I would say as of right now, Everly is still the most accurate quarterback, so he's probably set to be the starter. Our running back room had a significant jump. I believe Skylar Lewis was a high 60s or a low 70 overall player. He is now up to a 78 overall. While it is cool to see that Zamir Rowe is up to a 79, the main thing I noticed in the receiver room is Lyle Shermer is now a 78 overall. John Hart does not really progress that much. He is at a 77. Taven Smalls at a 77 as well. But I am excited to see Shermer's actually progressing. I don't believe any of our tight ends took a massive jump. Livingston is our best one right now. It says he's a 75 overall. This one, though, is a massive jump. Tyler Angel is now an 85 overall. There is no way he was even close to that high last season. He has now jumped to Ron Atkins. Atkins may be going to play right tackle. What about left guard? That's up to an 80 overall. Our center's up to an 81. Right guard's up to an 84. And right tackle is a 76. Now to check out the defensive line, that's a 76 overall at left end with Sean Waller. At right end's an 84 with Isaiah Hastings and an 80 with Britt Wilkes. Then at defensive tackle, we have an 86 overall in Green, a 79 in Toon, a 74 in Wade. Outside linebacker will be a 79 overall Wes Spears. Middle linebacker is a 76 overall Jermaine Bain. Right outside linebacker is a 77 in Marco Goodwin. So he has actually passed Celestin here. We'll have to make a decision there. I'm pretty positive that Greg Morris was not this highly rated of a corner either. He is an 82 overall now, just under Antoine Copper, so he will probably be our DB number 2 this year. Unfortunately, neither one of our safeties make a massive jump there, but strong safety looks like Carl Wicks is up to an 80 overall. That was definitely a decent jump for him as well. He may actually start over the guy we brought in the transfer portal. And then finally, Sean Augustine, our kicker, is up to a 76 overall. This season, the best player on our team is going to be Stephylan Green. If I said your name wrong, I apologize. But Tyler Angel getting a massive jump is definitely huge, along with a guy like Greg Morris. I was really hoping one of our quarterbacks could make that kind of jump, but maybe next season they will. The final stage of the offseason to encourage transfers. Now, I cannot guarantee if this is true or not, but from what I've heard, is if you cut freshmen and sophomores, they end up on another team, but if you cut juniors and seniors, they just disappear from existence. So I'm going to try to keep that in mind while I'm actually cutting players, but certain scenarios, I'm not going to guarantee that. Now, we only have to make 9 roster moves, but the first one we're going to make is running back Dante Strait, a 60 overall redshirt sophomore. You're not going to make this team. The very next player that's getting cut is right guard David Bean. I understand he's a redshirt junior, but at a 69 overall, he's buried on the offensive line depth chart here. Never going to see the field, no reason to waste a roster spot. Moving on, our next cut is going to be defensive tackle Austin Luna, a 69 overall redshirt sophomore. You are gone. The next player getting cut is going to be redshirt sophomore Devin Payne, a 71 overall, behind 2 other redshirt sophomore outside linebackers that are just flat out better than him. Hopefully you can find a spot on another team. I still have 5 more moves to make, and one of them is going to be safety Peyton Walters is going to be getting cut. And I believe safety Donatello Streeter has come in to actually make a couple plays for us, but now he's 69 overall behind 3 guys on the depth chart. We're going to go ahead and cut him. Will it let me cut our kicker Jason Smith just yet? We're going to go ahead and encourage that transfer, and yes, he is now gone. I am not a real big fan of cutting Nicky Wolf because he is a senior. I believe he's been on this team the entire time. He was part of the default roster, but I honestly just don't see a spot on this team for him right now. And then our final player that will be getting cut is wide receiver Steve Peters, a redshirt junior, 71 overall, only 86 speed. You guys know how I like to recruit my receivers, as you can see here with the incoming freshman and the redshirt junior that I brought in. But Steve Peters, you were not going to make this team. But that now officially wraps up this offseason video. In between episodes, I will go ahead and build our schedule and our recruiting board, handle all the red shirts and the depth chart and everything like that. That way, when we come back, we can jump right into the games.